Okay, class, let's finish up this meet and talk about Jewish medieval since we only have one image from AP regarding this kind of Jewish culture. And before getting into our image, we really need to understand that we're kind of working on a theme of art that falls under manuscripts. And you've gotten a lot of manuscript art in this content area. It's important to be able to decipher through the different manuscripts to understand, their differences from each other. But it's just in general really important for you to be able to answer what were the manuscripts, why were they created, what purpose did manuscripts serve, to just kind of get a general understanding for the need for manuscripts during this time period. A manuscript is exactly how it sounds. It is a book. It is a written book. That's what they were. They were there to record down, um, the word of God, kind of moral stories. Um, they were there to record, um, beliefs, but also traditions and procedures. They were created because we needed, to start kind of spreading the word of God. And the way that you do that, there's many ways that you do that, but manuscripts were one of them. Manuscripts were mostly made for kind of the elite or the noblemen or for priests. So you either found them, within the church that was there for, priests to use, but you would also find them as personal manuscripts that were developed for a specific patron. And of course those patrons were usually of upper status, of some sort of elite status, because they were extremely expensive to make. um, they were created because it helped kind of guide practice, and they were, you have to remember that these manuscripts were not created during a time where mass production was possible. This is prior to printing presses and things like that. So every single manuscript that we've been looking at thus far is a one of a kind. It is a work of art, created by a trained artist. Oftentimes that was usually a monk. Remembering that your common people, your majority of people were illiterate, and so not only could only certain people actually create these manuscripts, but also only certain people could read them. And so that's why these manuscripts are also so filled with visual imagery and illustration, because a lot of the stories that are being told are being depicted pictorially. What purpose did they serve? We kind of went through that. But again, you think about that that function, that motivation of art. Oftentimes they were used for sermon in a church. Oftentimes they were used in a personal home for study, for education, for to kind of remind yourself of practice and traditions. Um, by also being somebody of higher status and wealth, having your own manuscript created, then you were quite often, as the patron, part of the manuscript. And those are also ways that we're seeing, bringing you closer to God. So they served a variety of purposes, but overall, generally speaking, we know that they were there to educate, to record, and to spread the word of God. These are 3 manuscripts that we've covered so far, just in this content area alone. We have scenes from the Apocalypse, which was very pictorial, a lot of visual imagery, very little text, the use of extremely valuable materials of inks and precious golds. We have the Lindisfarne Gospels, where here we really learned about that illuminated manuscript the illuminated letter, that very kind of stylistically medieval art that is very associated with, that England and Irish and Wales geographical region. Lots of repetition of patterns and shapes, and just highly decorated. The lettering itself was also cared for with extreme precision, and and like I said, just that elevation of decoration is what made it very valuable and very beautiful. And then here we have the Vienna Genesis, couple of pages from this manuscript, where here we have more text, but we also have those kinds of illustrations that definitely help understand the stories from the text above. So we're in this theme of manuscripts, and that's what leads us to our image for Jewish medieval, where we'll be looking at the Golden Haggadah. The Golden Haggadah is a manuscript that is very interesting because if you know anything about contemporary Jewish art, that really the use of images is not practiced. Very much like Islamic art, which we will be learning about before Christmas break. But back in medieval times, and this is an important comparison to keep in mind, we still had those traditions of utilizing imagery within Jewish art, Jewish religious art. That the medieval Jews were definitely kind of working off of their concurrent cultures, like the Roman pagans, and kind of using and utilizing that imagery to help kind of get ideas across and help spread the word. So this is pre-contemporary Jewish practice, where the use of images and icons kind of became something that was prohibited. So what we're looking at here is a manuscript called the Golden Haggadah. The Golden Haggadah is it's basically a manuscript that is the full story of the Jewish exodus from Egypt under Moses. Moses is who led the Jews out of persecution from Egypt, and that is specifically what the Golden Haggadah is all about. AP Art History wants you to be aware of 3 pages from the Golden Haggadah. Okay, the first page is the plagues of Egypt. The second is the scenes of liberation, and then the third page is the preparation for Passover. Being mindful that there's lots of other pages with lots of other kind of stories and documentations, but these are the 3 that you need to be responsible for. If you know anything about this image, I think it is most important to know the content, to really focus on the content, not so much form, but heavily on the content, which then hopefully you'll be able to give a little bit of contextual understanding with that as well. So I'm going to go through each of these pages just very simply and point out the scenes on each page. So each page has 4 different scenes, and if you noticed, we're not looking at a manuscript that has text. So this is all visual communication, visual narrative, and each page has 4 different scenes, all related to that page topic, kind of like a comic book style. So I'm going to just point out what each of the scenes represent. So on the plagues of Egypt, these are the different types of plagues that were dealt with up here on the upper right. This is the plague of frogs that's initiated here by Moses. And I do have a close-up of this on the next slide that we'll look at. To the left of it, this is the plague of lice, and we have the Egyptian pharaoh and kind of his entertainers or his musicians that have all been affected and infiltrated with lice. You can see them kind of itching around, and lice are those little tiny mites that nest and feed in hair and fibers and things like that. And they become, very scratchy and itchy. So you can kind of see that discomfort occurring up here in the left. And then down here in the lower left, we have the plague attack of the wild beasts. And that's what this is representing. And then on the lower light, we have the plague on the livestock. So when we talk about these plagues, we're also talking about how it didn't just affect the people, but it also affected the livelihood, livestock, crops, and things like that. So again, we have the frogs, we have the lice, we have the wild beasts, and then we have the livestock. This page is the scenes of liberation. So when the Jews were, instead of, being persecuted by Egypt, that they were led out of Egypt by Moses. And in these four scenes, it's kind of important to understand that up here in the right-hand corner, what we have here is the plague and death of the firstborn Egyptian child. And then to the left of that, we have the Pharaoh up here at the top that is ordering all the Israelites to leave Egypt. And then in the lower right, we have the Egyptians that are dressed in medieval armor, attacking the Israelites. And then here we have the Israelites safely crossing the Red Sea, but the Egyptians here are the ones that are following them and drowning. So this kind of depicts their fleeing of Egypt and their liberation. This page here is, one of the pages that shows the traditions for the preparation for Passover. And, Passover is the kind of Jewish holiday, or the annual day that the Jewish culture commemorates the liberation from Egypt. And this page specifically depicts different traditions and different ways and different things you do to prepare for this Passover celebration. And so in the upper right-hand corner, we have Moses' sister, Miriam, who is playing a tambourine. It has like some Islamic symbols on it. But basically, just making music, having, song and dance and celebration. That she's joined by, other maidens who are dancing and playing other contemporary, musical instruments. In the upper left-hand corner, here we have the master of the house. So, this is, a personal family space. And the master of the house is sitting under the canopy, but kind of overseeing and ordering the distribution of the matzah, which is their they're like kind of breaking of the bread, their tradition of breaking of the bread. And then so they have the bread and the meats that they kind of distribute to the remainder of the family, and the head of the household is kind of the one that does that. So that's what that scene is portraying. And then down in the lower right, we have a family that is preparing the home for Passover. So what you see is you have the women kind of doing traditional cleaning. And then you have the man that is searching for the leaven and the other kind of traditional and ceremonial objects that are used during Passover. Like, for example, they have a tradition of like the washing of the hands, and they use a specific basin for that. So the man is more getting kind of those traditional ceremonial practices and objects ready, while the woman is just preparing the home for coming together and the celebration of Passover, the feast, and things like that. And then in the lower left, we have people that are preparing for Passover. So this is more basically around kind of the feast. So you have sheep that are being prepared to be slaughtered. You have utensils that are being cleaned and purified. And, this is kind of like preparing the food that will then, be blessed before kind of eating your traditional meal. And so, these are depicting, kind of the traditions that are part of the home. And it's very, very common when we talk about the function of the Golden Haggadah, that it actually is very common for all households to have some sort of version of the Haggadah. So ones that are, made with very, very precious materials and that are very like, ornate. Of course, you probably have your more elite having those types of manuscripts, but this is a common thing in every common household to have some sort of version of it, because it is also part of the Passover tradition to bring the Golden Haggadah out. It fulfills the Jewish requirement to tell the story of the Jews' escape from Egypt, as a reminder of God's mercy, that is part of the Passover tradition. And so pulling out the Haggadah and using that manuscript to help, fulfill that requirement of Jewish faith is, still practiced yet today. That again, this is a home-based manuscript. It avoids, the stringent restrictions against those holy images that you would not find in a synagogue, but in the home, and the use, the function of the Haggadah kind of allows that pictorial quality. But it's important to realize that even though there's a lot of similarities the Haggadah has with the other manuscripts that we've looked at so far, there's a huge difference in function and a huge difference in who the patrons are and who the audience is and what their purpose is. Here's just some details of some of the scenes. This here is from the plagues of Egypt, and it's just a close-up showing the plague of frogs. Okay. And then here, this is from the scenes of liberation, where the Pharaoh is ordering the Israelites to leave Egypt. And then this was for the preparation of Passover, and you can see the musical instruments and that kind of Islamic symbol there in the middle, where they're just, kind of producing music and dancing for celebration. So hopefully that helps you understand the Golden Haggadah. And again, if you need a desire to learn more, Khan Academy's video on the Golden Haggadah is really helpful. But again, being this is our only Jewish image, I think it's very important that you understand the content of each scene and kind of some basic contextual information. All right, have a great day. Thank you.